Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Today we have the pleasure of talking to Gavin Stenhouse, Kung Fu, coming to the CW. Gavin, really nice to meet you, man. How are you?
Hi DJ, thanks for having me, man. Good to meet you too.
So people know about Kung Fu. They've seen it in the past. It's been a couple different iterations. We get a new version here. So what was it like jumping into this one?
It was really cool actually because I'm born and raised in Hong Kong, and like a lot of the Asian culture is, I feel like it's in my blood. I spent 10 years there, and I grew up doing martial arts as well, and literally everything that was on the script that popped out at me, I was like, I have to get this job. This would be so cool to get this job. And then went through the audition process, and yeah, fortunately, Christina Kim, the creator, just happened to pick me.
How old were you when you started doing martial arts?
I think, honestly, I think I was like 4. I
Wow.
remember, so I used to live in a place called Sai Kung in Hong Kong, and there was like a youth center which did activities that you could learn. And I remember doing Taekwondo before I learned how to swim,
Wow.
but that's all I remember. And then I kind of stuck with it, and I ended up in my late teens and early 20s going into like different martial arts like capoeira and eskrima and Muay Thai. I ended up settling on Muay Thai and coming back to like Western boxing. But to be honest, I had this one experience when I was an actor in London. I went to an audition at Elstree Studios, which is a bit like going to Paramount or something.
Mhm.
In LA, and I turned up and I had a black eye from 2 days before. I was sparring and this guy punched me in the face, but not only punched me in the face, like my head whipped back and hit like a wall or like a pillar or something, and I semi blacked out and got like all
Wow.
nauseous. And anyway, the next couple of days I had this deep black eye, and I went to the audition. Fortunately, it was for an MMA fighter, so I was thinking, oh yeah, this is going to look really great. But at the time I was like young, early 20s, skinny, scrawny, didn't really go to the gym. And I was like, I don't think I could even pass off as a bantamweight boxer at this point. But the black guy looked a kind of badass. But I think the casting director called my agent and was like, don't ever send this guy to me again, like looking like that. That's not cool.
Yeah, it's probably a little atypical of the rest of the people who are going in, even though it was for an
Right.
MMA fighter, right?
Yeah, it was extremely fortunate it was going up for the role that it was, but still, yeah.
So I think it's really cool you've had this global experience because you just mentioned London, you mentioned Hong Kong. How has
Mm.
that impacted you as a person overall?
Um, yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think for me, it's been a dual-edged sword because on the one hand, it's such a fortunate and privileged position to be in, to have such amazing experiences of other countries and other cultures at an early age. But at the same time, it's funny when people say, "Well, so what are you? You English, or are you from Hong Kong, or what?" And I don't really know how to answer that question because my dad's Scottish, my mum's Welsh. I was born in Hong Kong, so I'm technically British, I guess. But yeah, it's overall, I've got a very deep love for my time in Hong Kong. Like I said, I spent the first 10 years of my life there. And I um yeah, I think I probably identify most as being from Hong Kong, but I'm not a Hong Konger.
I got you.
Let's
Well,
guess I'm British.
there's so much to your story, right? I think that's really interesting.
Right.
There's also so much to this show, right? It kind of goes hand
Yeah.
in hand here. So
Yeah.
actually filming this thing, like it's one thing to get the part, you actually do the show. What was most fascinating to you about the experience?
The It's such a wonderful cast and crew. It's such a wonderful group of creatives that I feel very lucky to be a part of it. Because as soon as we got together we started shooting the pilot pre-pandemic,
Mm.
right, in 2020. And as soon as we got together, it felt like it was a special group of just really lovely, lovely people. And I remember sitting around the table read with everyone going through the different uh, their own dialects. So Thai would say something in Cantonese, and um, Henry would say something in Hakka, and Liv would say something in Mandarin, and someone else would say Hokkien, and all these really cool dialects. It felt like a special group of um, a little bit of history in the making. And, you know, since I think we're shooting episode 12 now currently, or 11 or 12, I've lost track. But since day one, it's been like a family, which has been really lucky because, you know, so many people are separated from their family right now. And being up in Canada, you have to come and quarantine for 2 weeks, and then, you know, you can't leave the country and then come back. So I think a lot of people in our bubble of work are feeling like at least we have our group as a family and to spend our time with and to support each other. And I think that's a testament to how the set is run and the vibe on the set, because the cast and crew are like, we all just love coming to work. We appreciate that we have work in the time that we're living in right now. And it feels like we're working on something special. So it's really a triumvirate of fortune.
It's certainly an important time to have that connectivity. And Gavin, it's also a really important time right now in our country. And it has not been an easy time for the Asian American community. Let's be honest, there have been hate crimes all across the country. And this comes out at a really important time. So what does it mean to you and the rest of the cast to bring out this show that portrays Asian men and women in such a powerful and strong way, given everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's heartbreaking in one sense to see all these every day. It seems like there's yet another video of someone being assaulted, someone from the Asian American or Pacific Island community being assaulted, and it's heartbreaking. And I don't know what the cure is for that, but I do know that representation is one of the most important things it's one of the most important duties, I think, that Hollywood or TV or whatever you want to call it has right now. Because if a group of if a culture or a group of people are represented on screen, then it goes some way at least to cover the distance of mitigating that otherness. And I think that otherness is possibly one of the root causes of how these violent acts are happening. Because in a show like ours, one would hope that bringing, you know, Asian American faces into a home where perhaps you haven't got access to as much information about Asian American communities in your immediate surroundings, I think that is, you know, the least that we could be doing right now to try and heal ourselves as a community. I also think that as someone who wants to proliferate allyship, or someone who wants to be a good ally, I think that, you know, it's also important to try to practice the presence of speaking up when you see something and disrupting these violent acts. And I think too many times in these videos, you see people kind of sat back, or initially it's the shock, right? You don't know what to do. But I think that the more we make it the norm to speak up and say something, to challenge that xenophobia, I think the more chance we have as a worldwide community to try and heal and move forward.
Yeah, 100% spot on there. I mean, I think you hit it. Allyship is so important. Even just the last year, right? Just speaking up on racial injustice, and especially in this year with everything happening to Asian Americans. And you mentioned representation also, right? So it's showing that women can lead this show in front of the camera and behind the camera. It's showing with your character, from what I read, it's like there is a potential relationship on the horizon here with the main character, like showing different types of relationships, showing different type of people who can run shows. You know, how important is that to you, especially given everything we just talked about?
Yeah, it's super important. I think, you know, Riz Ahmed, the actor Riz Ahmed, did an incredible speech some time ago about representation in England. And I think it's worth YouTubing and watching, because he really hits the nail on the head. It's important, right? It's important to make this normalized, to reduce this otherness. And the other great thing about my character, which I get to have a lot of joy in playing, is that he has such a strong moral compass but he works in a system which is inherently flawed, right? The American criminal system. And especially being on the prosecutorial side, he originally joined the DA's office because he wanted to make a difference. He wanted to make a change. And without giving too much away, it becomes quickly apparent that, that's a harder task than originally thought. As we all have these great ideas of going and changing the world when we leave school or college or whatever, and we realize, oh, it's actually super difficult and it's going to take a long time. But getting into that area of research for me, especially, the progressive prosecutorial movement in America, with progressive district attorneys like Chesa Boudin in San Francisco and Kim Foxx in Chicago. I think that's, again, without giving too much away, there's content in episodes as we go on in the season that reflects that change and reflects that desire for change. And for me, that's so fulfilling to be able to work with a writer's room that understands that and wants to comment on that and is brave enough to, put that onto paper, because it's political, right? And district attorneys are positions that we vote for.
Yeah.
And not everyone necessarily knows that. So the more eyes we get on the screen, the more eyes we get to see the story of progressive prosecutorial reform in this country. I think that's something that's excited me most about the last few years of so much darkness, is to see that there's been so much rejuvenation of activism and getting the youth interested in politics. And that's, I think, one of the things that really buoys me up out of the darkness of the last however many years it's been.
We certainly need to focus on that light, that's for sure. And you mentioned San Francisco before, and it's what, you're filming in Canada, but San Francisco is the backdrop of this story, right? Mm-hmm. What is most intriguing about the city after learning about it, after kind of, spending some time with it?
So we film up in Canada, we film in Vancouver. So we're not actually in San Francisco, but I did get the fortune to be in San Francisco some years ago. I think it was my first time in America. Wow. Well, my first time in America since I was much younger was in San Francisco. I got to do a play there, and I was blown away by just how concentrated an area of such rich, diverse diversity it was. So you could walk maybe 10 blocks and be in a completely different vibe of the city. And at the time I was just getting into film photography, and I spent nearly all of my days just running around taking pictures, because it was such a beautiful city, not only in architecturally speaking, but also just the character, the people.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really looking forward to the show, and best luck with everything going forward, right?
All right. Thanks so much, DJ. Great to be here.